Since we're talking about privacy, let's first look at the protection of privacy. In fact, privacy also has an owner. From the perspective of data use and processing, our company collects a large amount of customer privacy. We also mentioned operators just now. As a customer of the telecommunications company, when I go to the telecommunications company to handle business, I need to tell my personal privacy to the telecom company because it has a real name system. Please note, like the telecommunications regulatory authorities require a real name system, this is in line with China's cybersecurity law and personal information protection law. But the problem is, if I give my data to a company or an operator, can it safely use and process my data? Whether it can protect my data becomes a risk. If we talk about the perspective of operator data operation, it has some clear requirements for data use. We also touched on some of this in the first chapter, at least meet these principles. The first is what we call limiting collection, also known as minimal collection. If the data is not necessary for the business, then try not to collect it. We only collect from the company's perspective. Only collect the data that customers must collect to meet business needs. Do not exceed the scope of collection for the purpose. This is one. Another one is what we call informed consent. When using or accessing data, we need the end user, who is the owner of our privacy. He must be informed and consent. So when you use many apps, there will be a data privacy policy, which needs to be noted. Another one is destruction. When privacy and personal data are destroyed, the owner's consent must also be obtained. That is, the owner authorizes us as the custodian or processor of the data. We come to destroy the data. For example, it is possible to disclose the data, or the data should be safely destroyed. We safely process this data for him. This is all after obtaining the owner's consent. We as the unit operating this data, we can only operate. Every country has corresponding laws and regulations for data security. The most famous is the Safe Harbor project signed by the United States and the European Union. The Safe Harbor project is because the United States and Europe is relatively conservative in handling data. The United States is relatively free, so they have a conflict. The logic of Safe Harbor lies in when I am a US company, when I want to carry out digital business in Europe. For example, like Facebook or Twitter, you must join the Safe Harbor list. If I do not meet the requirements of Safe Harbor, in a strict sense, you cannot start a business in Europe. So in this way, Safe Harbor is the earliest proposed data. For example, the use or operation of the company need to ensure the privacy of users in a certain country or region, a very important law and regulation. Safe Harbor has developed to today. Step by step is also derived. There is a transition in Safe Harbor. It's called Privacy Shield. Then the Privacy Shield, it's even more stringent. Until today, the EU generally uses GDPR, called General Data Protection Regulation. Now it is a common law and regulation between the EU and the United States regarding privacy processing. It is still in use today. The previous Safe Harbor and Privacy Shield are historical products. They are no longer used now, but GDPR is still in use. We also introduced this in the first chapter. So you will find, in fact, for the protection of the object, we first talk about compliance. Then for the protection of the object from the law, it is also step by step in derivation or upgrading and advancing. The purpose is to protect the rights and interests of data owners. What rights does the data owner have? First of all, in the entire data business or a data project, all stages should protect data ownership. That is, we must respect this. Owner, only by continuously maintaining security and the quality of this data, including our operation and use of data, must be approved by the owner. We can use and use data. This is a basic logic. Specifically, first of all, we as an information operation unit need to protect information. Here are some standards for data security. We need to meet, for example, comply with GDPR laws and regulations. Second, ensure that information is available to those who need access. That is, what does the owner have? The owner specifies authorization. equivalent to our admin or DBA. From a technical point of view, authorize someone through tools or operations. Then from a management perspective, in fact, it is the owner who specifies the authorization. The third one, when information is no longer needed, then the owner has the right to destroy the information. These are data authorizations, that is, from the collection of data to the use of data to the destruction of data. The owner must have the final say. In the first chapter, we also mentioned a special case, that is data in the cloud. For data in the cloud, it's hard to protect the owner's rights. So we usually do it through contracts, that is through legal means to protect the rights of the owner. But from the technical feasibility, it's hard to strictly define or prove that the data in the cloud is completely safe. For example, there may be the risk of data backup. Suppose this CSP is what we call a cloud provider. If there is a problem with the algorithm in the process of processing data, then in fact, your data is at risk. So the data in the cloud, if the sensitivity of the data is particularly high, we do not recommend moving to the cloud. The logic lies here. We mentioned earlier, as an owner, he needs to confirm this information. For example, when it is incorrect or no longer needed, let the owner explicitly tell the DBA that the data needs to be destroyed. Another one is the right to supervise the data. The right to supervise the data. Its logic lies in, when I, as an owner, authorize a user or DBA to maintain or use the data, does this user and DBA meet the requirements or standards for data processing? There must be data supervision. So the right to supervise the data, actually this is the main job of security. This is what our security department should do. There are a series of laws and regulations here. Its purpose is actually to use security, use the standards of the security department. He maintains the rights and interests of the owner. So everyone understands. So its purpose is to supervise whether the user and this, we say admin, whether the operation or maintenance of data meets the requirements. This is the right to supervise data. So whether it's the right to supervise data, including the right to use data, actually they are all rights of the owner. That is to say, it's possible that the owner doesn't trust our security department. He may assign someone from his own department to ensure the security of this data. It's also possible, the owner says that your security department's understanding of your data or the security of the data, your operation is approved by me. So, everyone pay attention. We just said, for the use of data, including the security of data, everyone pay attention. It is actually up to the owner to decide. What does it mean? It means that the owner assigns who will use the data and who will supervise the data for the project. When the owner assigns a security personnel, he will think, what will he think? He will think one is whether this person has the ability, has the technology to protect that data. Another one is, he will generally assign someone who is relatively familiar with the data and the data container, because in this way, he is more from a business perspective, because we just said the quality of your data. Actually, include these two parts. One is the security of the data itself. What else is there? Can he guarantee this data can provide more business value? You say you don't provide more business value, then you should at least maintain the business value of the data itself. So at this time, the owner may appoint his own department. He may not appoint the security department. He will appoint someone familiar with the data in his own department to ensure that the use of this data is safe and reliable and the data is valuable. So we also mentioned in the first chapter, so each department may have a security officer as a part-time job. The reason lies here. So what does data quality include? Actually, everyone can take a look. Is the data you collected known because of the need? Is it the minimum collection for this business? Then, has the data been, is the definition of the original data described accordingly, including whether the data is placed in the right place when it is stored and archived? We will talk about it later. Actually, data is divided into online storage near-line storage and offline storage, because different data is actually stored in different places. So his processing efficiency will not be the same. Another thing is that sometimes we need to display some data or have some releases. Is this process in compliance with the process? These all belong to the data quality protection. Corresponding operations or processes. The standard of protection. At least your data should be correct, updated in real time and timely, including the data is reliable and complete. So this data from the quality standard is what we call CA. Its availability, its integrity, and its confidentiality. Has it been fully protected? Especially for data, if we deal with it more in our daily work, the integrity of the data is very important, because when I process data, is this data real? Has it not been modified or tampered with? If your data source itself is not a problem, but the data has been changed during use, then whether this data can reflect the value of the data is controversial. That is what we say about data. Whether the data value you mined can stand up. Is this data source accurate? So this is a very important part of the data quality standard. So data quality, from the perspective of its security protection, it is divided into two things. One is called QC, one is called QA. Actually, QA and QC. If we have studied project management, we all know. So QA is called quality assurance. So QC is called quality control. These are two words. They are abbreviations of two phrases. Let's first look at data quality control. It is aimed at the data itself. Is this data real and complete? Is it not leaked? It is aimed at the quality of the data itself, or its own standards to evaluate. We can feel that it is actually aimed at the result. Is your data real? Is it available, effective? Then I guarantee, if I want to ensure that the data quality is a good result, then we need to do what? Review and upgrade the process of data operation. From the perspective of quality management, good process ensures good results. Is this process of operating and using data rigorous? Is it fully defined? This is QA. So what is the so-called QA? It's a judgment of process effectiveness. What is it more about? It's from an audit perspective. Let's take an example like McDonald's or KFC. When you go to their restroom, behind the door, there is a chart. So this chart, for each time period, whether the cleaner has come to clean, whether their manager has confirmed that it has been effectively cleaned, this is actually process control. So what is the final result? The final result is that the data is true, effective, and valuable. So this is more like an acceptance or an inspection. General inspection and acceptance are for the product itself, while audit is for the control of process effectiveness. So if we do these two things well, we can ensure that the data is in line with the owner's requirements. At the same time, it is also valuable in the whole process of data management. We just mentioned the documentation of data. So what is the documentation of data? It's the description of data, especially this kind of raw data, for the use of raw data, because raw data itself is a description of data attributes. There is a very important concept here. So where is the value of raw data reflected? It can ensure that data users can understand the context of the content and the limitations of the data set. What is the context of the content? It's what we call relationships. Especially in relational databases, it can reflect the relationship between data and data. For example, the relationship between two tables. This is the value of raw data, because data itself has no value. Only when data generates a relationship or data has a deviation and comparison, then the data has value. So the definition of raw data is actually a very important part of data documentation, because when we have clarified the relationship or found a more valuable relationship, we can provide more convenience and value for data operations. In this way, for example, I can find another table from a certain table that's thanks to the relationship of data, what we call this inner key, foreign key, the definition of this data set. You all understand. So raw data is quite important. It reflects a relationship between data. This is also what we just talked about, this data control and data quality assurance. One of its goals, we also mentioned just now, raw data, including, for example, the specific content in the file, the definition of this attribute, including the file itself, its file name, including the author of the file, the time the file was created. These all belong to raw data. It's not the data itself, but it can describe some attributes of the data. So based on having raw data, we also have business requirements and standards. Let's take a look. Here involves another important concept. That is the definition of data standards. So what is the policy of data? It's for me to meet the corresponding data business requirements, including security requirements. There might be a directional document. When you are actually doing it, we need to have data standards. Obviously, data standards are a secondary document. It's more detailed than data policy and strategy. It's our plan or process on how to use data. This is the standard of data. The content here is quite complex. Actually, the standard of data, its security is just one module of data standards. From the perspective of data standards, it's more about data management and data governance. We need to understand that data actually has 4 levels. The first level is the data itself. The data itself, you can take a look. Usually it's a true reflection of the data. We also call it data truth. Let me give you an example. For example, 95, please note. This is just a number, it doesn't represent anything. But from the data to go further, we get to information. So what is information? It's when data has context. We just said, what is context? A relationship. Where is this relationship reflected? For example, the average score of the whole class is 90. Let's take a look. For example, the mean value is 90. Then I got my score is 95. Obviously, I am above the average score, the information I get. This is a good student or a good score. So this is the value of information. So what does information have? It has a comparison of good and bad. It can be used to make decisions. Do I reward this person? Do I criticize this person? This is the second level. Then the third level is if I can reflect the same information every time or come to the same conclusion, then we will form a pattern or a template. That is long-term accumulation of information processing. We will get the same result or same rule. This is knowledge. For example, the square of A plus the square of B equals the square of C. This is a mathematical rule we often find. So this is the Pythagorean theorem, right? The Pythagorean theorem belongs to knowledge. So we can often get the same information. This forms knowledge. Knowledge can bring more value to humans. The highest level of data processing is what we call wisdom. When it comes to the level of wisdom, what does the value of data become? It can make corresponding decisions for the future. What is knowledge? It is a law that I currently or historically obtained or data statistics. Through this knowledge, I can judge the future trend. I can make a prediction for the future. This is wisdom. For example, we all know that there are many kinds of human wisdom, like some philosophies, the meaning of life, how to say these things. It's very profound, but it represents, for example, our accumulation of life experience, judgment for the future, or a decision for a future value target. So this is wisdom, data from truth to information to knowledge to wisdom. It is a series of processing and refining. We will find that the value of data is increasing. This is what we call. This requires a standard for data operations. You can maximize the value of data bit by bit. We call this process. Now there is a popular term called big data analysis. Speaking of a slightly technical, that is the technical data is also called the process of data mining or mining. This makes data generate greater value. We understand this place. Why define a data standard? I said the process and norms of data processing and operation. What is the purpose? Through a series of data integration to better understand data, make the data generate greater value. So this is the goal of data management or data governance. Here that is the standard. What does it have? There is its applicable range. For example, there are international standards for data use. There are those of various countries. Like our country, there is a data protection law. There are also those of various regions. If you look at the states in the United States, his standards for data use and mining are different. There may also be local ones. My organization or my department has its own sayings. We need to understand this place. The use of data standards needs to respect the jurisdiction. That is, if the area does not require, the local does not require, then we look at the region. If the region does not require, we look at the country. Anyway, the place where your data is generated or stored, the legal requirements are what we must first accept and respect. I will give a simplest example. Just mentioned this privacy shield or safe harbor or GDPR. GDPR requires the data of European citizens. So it still belongs to European citizens. The owner is still a European citizen. Strictly speaking, Europeans should store European data. According to European data standards, there is a problem here. What if when American companies process European citizen data, he may not be able to reach it due to computing power or some technical means. I have to use process data in the United States. There may be business achievements. That's okay. What to do? My country or my place, the country where Europe is located or the European Union, he has some laws and regulations. I can only follow the European citizens. His privacy clause, according to the requirements of GDPR, I hide the corresponding data for him, what we call data anonymization. The remaining data, I can only make it public or reach the United States for processing. So everyone understands, if you carry out a data business in a certain country, you must first comply with local laws and regulations in the implementation process. Everyone needs to understand this is all principle. If you want to mine this person's data, it must respect the requirements and standards of this country or region. And in the entire data processing life cycle, we must be strict to ensure the use and reasonable continuous validity of the data. This is what we just mentioned. QA, we must have control over the process. Here comes the problem. If I want to define a data processing standard, we must first understand or clarify the specifications of the data. This process is actually difficult. If you have done data governance, you may understand. This is called data modeling. That is my generation, processing and use of data. I will have a model. It is a bit like a process or a methodology. For example, the creation of our database, the form of the database. Our grid, this corresponds to the files of the database. How should the table be created? How many columns does it have? How to build this data relationship? This is the process of data modeling. If this data modeling is reasonable and including the index of the data, it is optimized and the relationship of the data table, it meets the requirements. In this case, in our daily data use in the future, can maximize the data. There will be a test point here. That is, how do I think about data modeling? Please note that generally we will think, or as an architect, we will think, should meet technical requirements. Actually not. After studying for so long, everyone must understand what I might create this data model. The person who created it may not understand technology, but he must understand what business. For the means or tools of technical implementation, this is solved by technical personnel. What's the key? What can I find through data? What is the business value I can reflect? This is very important. And this business need, where should it come from? From the user department, from the user's idea, from the user's thoughts. So everyone pay attention to this place. When I am doing data modeling, I am defining the specifications of the data, including the logic of building the database. It is necessary to fully communicate with various business departments. That is, the stakeholders we deal with. Then I go to do the work of data modeling. So what is data modeling? We just mentioned. First of all, you must be clear what kind of data value do I get from the database. And we also mentioned just now, so who are the stakeholders of the database, who uses it, who maintains it, who owns it, who ensures its security, including the dependencies between data, how are tables and tables called, what is their relationship, how to establish this association. These are all considerations for data modeling. Here we can chat a few words. So who are the talents in data modeling? Generally, they are advanced mathematics. He has high requirements for advanced mathematics. Some people say whether it is about the level and ability of computers. Actually not. He should be logical about numbers, including being sensitive to the value of data. I had a classmate before. He is a top student in the mathematics department of Nanjing University. He is now working for a Fortune 500 company. This is a Hong Kong company. They are in real estate. So my classmate, he himself is just mathematics, master of mathematics. Then he represents the company. He himself also serves as the chief financial officer. At the same time, every once in a while, he goes to Hong Kong. He goes for this strategic analysis for senior management. That is through data mining. He will provide business strategy for the company's senior management. For example, on investment plans. Make this decision analysis. So everyone understands data modeling is really a relatively advanced technology and its business value is relatively large. In addition, here there is also a popular term now, just call it digital transformation. Digital transformation has been a hot concept in the past 2 years. There is another word actually related to digital transformation, but he is more technical. That is what we call the construction of the data middle platform. In fact, we just mentioned data modeling, including digital transformation, including the construction of the data middle platform. So they are related. Their essence is to increase the value of data or use numbers to drive business. In the past, we defined data storage through business needs. That is, what data do I hope to get or what data to store. After I set the business requirements, then I go to find the corresponding data, I save it. Why emphasize the data middle platform now? The logic now is just the opposite. That is because I have strong computing power and I have this distributed computing or storage technology. Then I have more storage space and computing power. Then we can save the data first. That is, I first find a way to have more channels or resources to get more data. Then I put this data in a container. What is this data called? Called data lake. That is, I have a large amount of data. Then I sort it out through the sorting of the data lake, including some repairs to the data, filling in the data, make this data more valuable. This is what we often refer to as the construction of the data middle platform. Actually, what is it called? It's also called the construction of the data warehouse. Data warehouse, that is, I have a lot of valuable data. I put it in a container. Then I mine the data warehouse. There are many tools on this. Hadoop platform itself, like Kafka, a series of tools. This part does not belong to our entire content. As long as you know and understand, it's okay if you are interested in this part. In fact, we say this part is big data technology. After a series of technical processing, then what? We will produce the final result. That is, through data analysis, we will get results. In this process of analyzing the data warehouse, what is used here, we just mentioned, that is, your data is related, they are all related. Then through the relationship and association between data, we can find the value of data or analyze more valuable information, including knowledge and experience. Then these results provide a basis for our business decision making. This is the value and role of the data middle platform. Why do digital transformation? In fact, it is to find new business growth points. Everyone understands this. Why emphasize digital transformation in recent years? Especially Jack Ma often says, if this company does not take the path of digital transformation, then it will eventually be eliminated because the competition is too fierce. Traditional business, we will find his. Can everyone think of? Then you, we then in this value, in the era of relatively inward role, then how do you survive? Then you must blaze a new trail. We have to find a new business growth point. Then how to find it? Make decisions through data. There is also an example in the book. This example, after all, it's a course. He didn't specifically mention it. Actually, it's the example of China Merchants Bank. China Merchants Bank in the financial industry. He is a company that is relatively ahead in digital transformation. Then China Merchants Bank, he has these steps from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. Even until today, he has already started to step into this 4.0 era. The 1.0 of China Merchants Bank. That is what we say. He first converted the passbook into a card. That is, his card business is 1.0. In this way, he gained a large number of customers. That is, a large number of people use the services of China Merchants Bank. Because if you have a passbook and a card, your card is also convenient to carry. In addition, as for the card, it is more convenient for everyone to use. This is the 1.0 strategy of China Merchants Bank. Then, when it comes to 2.0, China Merchants Bank took the lead in introducing the AP. The APP was launched, that is the APP we are talking about. He started to use informatization means to conduct this related business. In this way, it is more convenient for him to process data and the depositors feel very good. That is, I don't need to carry a card. I can operate directly on my mobile phone or computer. It's also quite convenient. From card to app, he gained a large number of customers again. Then when it comes to 3.0, pay attention everyone, he has a new initiative. Now that we already have the AP, what am I doing on the AP platform? Doing something similar to the development of e-commerce. If you have used the China Merchants Bank's app, we will know. Actually, he has become like an e-commerce enterprise many times. For example, he has meal tickets, that is discounts for meals. He has movie tickets. He has a lot of digital interfaces with many companies like Wanda or like Bona. They have this digital interface. In this way, it is very convenient to buy movie tickets with the China Merchants Bank's AP. And you can check tickets directly because China Merchants Bank has more business touchpoints or more business scenarios, then he will gain a lot of customers. That is what we say used to maintain customer stickiness. And by increasing the number of customers, you will find that he has transitioned from traditional, what we call financial business, to consumer. He is somewhat similar to the fast-moving consumer goods industry, various consumption scenarios. In this way, he can also analyze the user's user portrait, because here we mentioned the construction of the middle platform. Because I have a lot of customer information, I have a lot of business scenario information, I also have the customer's consumption records. Through a series of analysis, I can judge, for example, what is the age group of this consumer, how much is his deposit, how much is his monthly salary in terms of consumption, what is his direction of consumption, what is the proportion of his income, what are his preferences for consumption. He has a conservative consumption concept. He is more, that is what we call a more optimistic consumption concept. Then through a series of digital support technologies, that is what we call data processing technology, we conduct deep data correlation or data analysis. What will we get? In the future, I target these types of users. This is the refinement of user portraits. As China Merchants Bank, I know these users, what kind of advertisements should I send to him. For another part of users, he may be conservative or this fund value growth is the main demand. Then I will lean towards this business direction. So when we talk about here, everyone understands that is the standard of data. Actually, it is data usage, including data flow, including the creation of our data modeling model. This all requires preliminary planning. The purpose is to make data generate value. At the same time, in the process of processing, you still have to comply your processing of the original data. For this data, after mining, you comply with the specifications, you can mine more valuable data, but you have to comply with the regulations. That may be some risks of privacy. I have to avoid it. So this is a whole set of management systems. Safety is just a part of it. But we also understand the future digital transformation and the construction of the digital middle platform is IT, including security, including this business, just the direction of the entire enterprise business development. So when we talk about this, how to build a secure data middle platform for the mining and use of data, are we compliant? The demand for security talent in our country during the digital transformation. The demand for talent is still very large. Just now we also mentioned this is the construction of the data warehouse. That is your part. Digital support technology, how do you mine? How to maximize the value of data? Actually, this is what we call the construction model of the data warehouse. You can take a look. Actually, it is divided into two layers. One part is the bottom business drive. That is, you have to have massive data. You say, I am doing data analysis. I have to have this massive data, including the source of this data. It must be safe and reliable. In addition, the authenticity of the data must be okay. If the data you get is not real, it makes no sense. So I have to have massive data and it's real and reliable. This is the basis of data processing. We also call it the database layer. Then what about your upper layer? That is the demand layer. That is what we just mentioned. I am doing this, sorting out, summarizing, including in this process of excavation. Can we find the relationship of the data? Can we make the data drive business decisions? The data is at the base or foundational level. In the end, I have to meet the needs of the business or be able to clearly define a business direction. This is the upper level requirement. So the whole data warehouse model, in fact, we start from him. You are a person who understands both the business and also need to understand the data relationship or data security. He also needs to have some understanding. It is very likely that a department will do this. One person may not be able to handle it. For example, like Alibaba, the construction of its data warehouse is extremely complex. It has hired many experts in mathematics or this kind, top students to create its data warehouse model. That is, how to build the database, including relational data, non-relational data, structured data, and unstructured data, including possible competitors' crawler data. How do I summarize and deeply mine these data? This is a popular technology at present.